On a cold December morning in 2012, the small town of Newtown, Connecticut, woke up to what seemed like an ordinary day. Parents prepared their children for school, buses rolled down quiet streets, and the holiday season was just around the corner. But within hours, this peaceful town would become the center of one of the most horrifying tragedies in American history. The events that unfolded inside Sandy Hook Elementary School that day would not only claim innocent lives, but also leave scars on a nation, sparking debates about gun violence, mental health, and security that still continue more than a decade later. It was a day when childhood innocence was shattered, when safety inside a classroom was violently torn away, and when the name Sandy Hook would forever be etched into collective memory. Sandy Hook Elementary was like many schools across the country. It stood in a suburban neighborhood surrounded by trees and modest homes, serving hundreds of young children between kindergarten and fourth grade. Parents trusted that when their children walked through its doors, they would be safe, cared for, and nurtured. The teachers were beloved in their community, known for their dedication and warmth. Many of the students were just beginning their journey in education, learning to read, write, and make friends. For them, the world was still a place of wonder. For the teachers, it was their mission to protect that sense of innocence. But no one could have predicted the terror that would invade those classrooms that morning. Among the victims were 20 first-grade students, all between 6 and 7 years old. Their lives had only just begun. They were children who loved art, music, and playing outside. Some dreamed of being firefighters, doctors, or teachers. Their parents described them as full of laughter and curiosity, bundles of energy with unique personalities that made every day special. Alongside them were 6 educators who gave their lives trying to protect their students. They were teachers, administrators, and staff members who, in their final moments, displayed courage and sacrifice. Their stories remind us that even in the darkest moments of humanity, there can still be acts of bravery and love. The shooter, a 20-year-old man named Adam Lanza, had grown up in Newtown. His early life was marked by difficulties, including struggles with social interaction and mental health challenges. Over the years, he became increasingly isolated, retreating into a world of violent video games, online forums, and disturbing obsessions. He lived with his mother, Nancy Lanza, who tried her best to support him, but also kept a collection of firearms in their home. Their relationship was complicated, marked by love, but also by growing distance. On the morning of December 14th, 2012, Adam turned on the person closest to him. Before heading to the school, he shot and killed his mother as she lay in bed. She was his first victim, and her death marked the beginning of the rampage that would soon follow. Just after 9:30 a.m., Adam drove his mother's car to Sandy Hook Elementary, carrying with him an arsenal of weapons, including a Bushmaster XM-15E, 2S rifle, and handguns. He was dressed in black clothing and wore a bulletproof vest. He approached the school, which had recently upgraded its security system, including locked doors and cameras. But within moments, he forced his way inside by shooting through a glass panel near the entrance. The sound of gunfire echoed through the halls, shattering the morning calm. What happened next unfolded in a matter of minutes, but would alter countless lives forever. The first 911 calls began flooding in, Teachers locked classroom doors, pulled children into bathrooms and closets, and tried to keep them quiet. The gunman moved swiftly through the school, targeting the first grade classrooms. Inside those rooms, chaos erupted. Some children managed to escape, running out of the school in tears. Others were shielded by their teachers, who did everything in their power to protect them. Principal Dawn Hawksprung and school psychologist Mary Sherlock confronted the shooter in an attempt to stop him. Both were killed instantly, their bravery a testament to their dedication. Teacher Victoria Soto hid her students in a closet, telling the gunman that they were in the gym. She was murdered for her defiance, but many of her students survived because of her selfless act. Another teacher, Lauren Rousseau, tried desperately to keep her class calm, but she too lost her life. The courage of these educators remains one of the most powerful elements of the story, a reminder that even in moments of terror, humanity shines through. Within minutes, police officers arrived at the scene, racing toward the sound of gunfire. By this point, the shooter had taken the lives of 26 people inside the school. As the police closed in, Adam Lanza turned one of his handguns on himself, ending his own life before he could be apprehended. The silence that followed was eerie, broken only by the cries of survivors and the chaos of first responders trying to secure the building. In less than 11 minutes, an entire community had been torn apart. Parents rushed to the school, desperate for news, their faces filled with fear and disbelief. Some were reunited with their children. Others were led to a nearby firehouse, where they would learn that their loved ones would never come home again. The grief that filled that firehouse was unbearable. Families clung to each other, screaming, crying, and collapsing as the weight of the tragedy settled in. The investigation began immediately. Authorities searched Adam Lance's home, uncovering a chilling collection of evidence. They found multiple firearms, hundreds of rounds of ammunition, and writings that revealed his disturbing mindset. He had been planning the attack for months, studying past mass shootings and keeping meticulous notes. Investigators pieced together his reclusive lifestyle, noting how he had withdrawn from society, avoided social interaction, and communicated mostly through online platforms. His digital footprint was filled with dark content, violent fantasies, and obsessions with previous school shootings. There were no accomplices. This massacre was the work of one deeply troubled individual who had turned his anger and isolation into an act of unimaginable violence. At first, investigators struggled to understand his motive. There was no clear reason why he chose Sandy Hook Elementary, no personal connection to the school or its staff. Some believed he targeted the most vulnerable victims to maximize shock and devastation. Others speculated that his actions were driven by a desire for infamy, to make his name known alongside other mass shooters. But in the end, the question of why remained largely unanswered. What was clear was that a perfect storm of mental health struggles, access to firearms, and social isolation had converged in a way that ended in devastation. As details emerged, the nation was left reeling. The images of grieving parents, tiny coffins, and a shattered school community dominated headlines. President Barack Obama addressed the nation in tears, calling for action to prevent such tragedies. The massacre reignited debates about gun control, mental health care, and school security. For many, Sandy Hook was the tipping point. The idea that 6 and 7-year-old children could be gunned down in their classrooms was too much to bear. Vigils were held across the country, candles were lit, prayers were offered, and communities far beyond Newtown grieved as though the victims were their own. But grief soon turned into anger and frustration. Many demanded stronger gun laws, including universal background checks and bans on assault weapons. In Connecticut, lawmakers passed some of the strictest gun control measures in the nation, including limits on magazine capacity and expanded background checks. Families of the victims became advocates, speaking out for change. Some created foundations in memory of their children, working to promote school safety and mental health awareness. But on the national stage, political divisions remained sharp. Despite widespread outrage, significant federal gun reform failed to pass, leaving many families feeling as though their loved ones had died in vain. The aftermath of Sandy Hook also saw an outpouring of conspiracy theories. Some individuals cruelly claimed that the massacre had been staged, that the victims were actors, and that it was part of a government plot to push gun control. These baseless claims added insult to unimaginable grief, forcing families to defend the reality of their loss. Lawsuits were filed against some of the conspiracy theorists, leading to public reckonings and financial penalties. The resilience of the families who stood up against harassment while continuing to honor their children's memories became yet another layer of this complex story. In the years since the tragedy, Sandy Hook has become a symbol. It represents the vulnerability of schools, the fragility of life, and the urgency of addressing violence in society. For survivors, the trauma never fully goes away. Children who escaped that day grew up with memories no child should ever carry. Teachers returned to classrooms forever changed. Parents marked birthdays, holidays, and anniversaries with an empty chair at the table. Yet amid the pain, there has also been resilience. The community of Newtown came together, supporting one another through unimaginable sorrow. Memorials were built, names were etched in stone, and the victims' legacies were preserved in countless acts of remembrance. The crime itself was over in minutes, but its impact will last for generations. It forced Americans to confront uncomfortable truths about gun access, mental illness, and safety in public spaces. It challenged lawmakers, educators, and parents to rethink what it means to protect children. And it left behind haunting questions. Questions about what could have been done differently, about whether the tragedy could have been prevented, and about how to ensure it never happens again. As we reflect on Sandy Hook, it is not just the horror of the act that lingers, but the lives that were lost. 20 children who never got to grow up. 6 educators who gave everything to protect their students. A mother who lost her life before the massacre even began. Each of them had stories, dreams, and futures that were stolen in an instant. Their absence is felt every day, not only by their families, but by an entire nation that mourns them still. Thank you so much for watching the video. Good night.